Democratic Senator Joe Manchin mocked the Bernie Sanders proposal of a $15 an hour minimum wage at a off-the-record event with restaurant lobbyists. Now, this story, as I'll get to, not all that surprising, but what may surprise you is the bill that Joe Manchin just came out to apparently co-sponsor, which is pro-union. But there's a big but there. He doesn't actually support it, and I'll tell you why. So I'm going to go over this story, that story, and also discuss just the amount of support that exists for the wage increase, showing you how off base Joe Manchin is and also where his interests clearly lie. So first off, this story was broken by the Daily Poster by Joel Warner and Andrew Perez. And you can see here Joe Manchin talking with the National Restaurant Association Executive Vice President Sean Kennedy. Sean Kennedy used to work with Obama, and now he is one of the loudest proponents against raising the wage. So let me get a little more into what happened here. So during his talk, Manchin specifically took aim at Sanders for continuing to push for a $15 an hour minimum wage. Quote, "We've been having meetings on minimum wage, and I can't for the life of me understand why they don't take a win on $11, he said. Bernie Sanders is totally committed in his heart and soul that $15 is the way to go. Well, it might be the way to go, Bernie, but it ain't gonna go. You don't have the votes for it. It's not going to happen. So they're going to walk away with their pride saying we fought for 15, got nothing." This is part of the reason why when this wage increase was first presented as a bill that I was critical of it, because you have to assume that you're not going to get what you're proposing. When you come to the table with a proposal, you have to shoot higher than what you actually want. They should have made this bill $20 an hour. They should have or added provisions to it where it was, $15 over 2 years instead of over 4 years. Do something where it would give you room to cut it down and move to a position that you're more or that you are still comfortable with. But by starting at 15, you already are limiting the debate to a max of $15 an hour. This is not how you negotiate. It's the exact same thing with raising the corporate tax rate. Biden doesn't actually care about raising it to where it used to be. But if he actually cared about raising it to where it used to be or raising it to an acceptable number, he would have started with 40% and then, been negotiated down to 35 where it used to be or down to 28. But now people like Manchin are saying it should be down to 25 because they limited the debate at the beginning with what they're asking for. You have to ask for more than what you want. This is how you negotiate. And it's amazing to me that progressives, when they put these bills forward, they're still just asking for what is ultimately the bare minimum when they should be asking for a lot more. So going on here, Manchin added that he doesn't think the minimum wage should be increased to more than $11, and he said there should still be a lower sub-minimum wage for workers who rely on tips. Quote, "If it comes down to one person, I don't believe it should be above $11. I don't think the tipped wage should ever go above half of that," Manchin said. The federal minimum wage is currently $7.25 an hour, and the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers is $2.13. West Virginia has an $8.75 minimum wage with a $2.62 tipped wage. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, of course, the majority of Americans support raising the wage to $15 an hour. Poll after poll after poll after poll shows you this. In fact, the most popular aspect of Biden's COVID relief bill before the wage increase was stripped out of it was the wage increase. So this from G. Elliott Morris from another poll. The poll also finds that the proposed $15 an hour minimum wage is 18 points net popular. 18 points net popular, making it more popular than everything Trump did in office and the most popular key legislative action since Dodd-Frank a decade ago. So just to be clear here, this may in fact be the same. No, I think it's a different poll. So this was Reuters Ipsos. This is the Economist YouGov poll. So $15 an hour was the most popular part of the COVID relief bill, and it was stripped out. Now, in terms of Manchin, obviously his interests are pro-corporate. He's at a restaurant association meeting. But here, he also has, I mean, his own money is tied into this. TYT did a report on this from March. Legal documents show Manchin has stakes in companies that pay less than $15 an hour. So not only is Manchin, receiving donations from corporate lobbyists or corporations in general, but also his own finances are tied to this wage increase. So of course he doesn't want to increase it. Now, let's get to the PRO Act. So Manchin here, this caught a few people off guard. Senator Joe Manchin has thrown his support behind the PRO Act, union-backed legislation to promote labor organizing. The PRO Act would block right-to-work laws and impose tougher restrictions on companies seeking to prevent unionization efforts. So why would Manchin back this when clearly he is not pro-union? Well, a couple of reasons. So first of all, if you want more on the PRO Act, I do a breakdown here on this video. Tim Ryan Goes Wild, Rips GOP Over Union Bill. Just search up that title, you'll find the video, and I'll have a big breakdown on the PRO Act, including going over many of these provisions here that close loopholes that exist that really essentially help to not just strengthen unions that exist, but also to help create more unions. So it's a fantastic bill. But also, I discussed the impact in terms of unions on income. So as you see, the share of income going to the top 10%, you see the decline of unions, showing you that even if you're not, this is overall, by the way, so even if you're not in a union, the existence of unions benefits everybody. So anyways, I go over all of that in this video, so go check that out. But let me get to, first of all, part of why Manchin came to this decision. So Ken Klippenstein here is saying Joe Manchin's reversal on the PRO Act, which would be the biggest expansion of workers' rights in decades, didn't happen spontaneously. Dem socialists phone banked for this like crazy, saying they made 500,000 calls targeting holdout states. Now, this is all good, right? Except, of course, Joe Manchin does not support the PRO Act because he knows the bill in its current form cannot be passed through budget reconciliation. Meaning, you need 60 votes for the PRO Act to pass. Manchin knows they don't have 60 votes. So he can pretend to support this pro-union bill, knowing that it's not going to pass and knowing that he does not support getting rid of the filibuster. Meaning that as long as you need 60 votes to pass the PRO Act, then it's not going to pass. So it's important to be aware of this. Be aware of the performance versus reality. Saying you support something publicly, even co-sponsoring it, does not actually amount to you doing the work to pass it. Democrats often do this. They'll pass, they're doing it with several things right now. They'll pass something in the House, knowing that, at least leadership, Democratic leadership, knowing that it's not going to pass in the Senate because they need 60 votes in the Senate. So I think statehood for DC just passed in the House. That's not going to pass in the Senate. So maybe they would support that anyways. I don't know. But showing you that they can pass whatever they want in the House, but unless they have those 10 extra votes in the Senate, it's simply not going to happen. And this also, it's important to be aware of how the discussion has shifted now that Democrats are in control. Because over the past 4 years, the conversation was different. Democrats didn't have the ability to pass anything. They didn't have the White House. They didn't have the Senate. They only had the House for a couple of years. So essentially, you had Democratic House pass several bills that could have gone through the Senate, didn't because it was controlled by the GOP. But now you have a situation where Democrats have full control. They have control of the White House and of Congress. And understanding that, there is still, of course, as I discussed, limitations in terms of votes. But with budget reconciliation, you can get a lot through. They could have got the wage increase through if they just disregarded the parliamentarian who doesn't matter at all. They can overrule the parliamentarian to pass $15 an hour through budget reconciliation, decided not to because, again, Democratic leadership doesn't actually care about passing it. But understand now, this is why you're seeing more criticism of Democrats, because they have power. They have the power to actually pass stuff. Now, for me, a lot of this comes down in terms of criticizing, let's say, progressives, because you've also maybe seen a lot more of that recently, it doesn't really make sense to me personally. I know I'm kind of biased. I like Bernie, but it doesn't make sense to me to criticize Bernie too much in the Senate, as he's just one vote. And Democrats could easily replace his one vote with any Republican. So the idea of Bernie holding up a bill in the Senate because, say, it doesn't, go far enough, say it's the infrastructure bill and it doesn't go far enough, he holds up with one vote. It doesn't really matter because they can get any Republican on board and essentially make the bill worse to get a conservative on board and vote for it. So the real focus of, when it comes to criticism of progressives, should be on the House, where they have the Progressive Caucus, about 20 members who, it's actually a more progressive caucus this time. You have people like Jayapal and Ilhan Omar and Katie Porter in the leadership. So you have people who have the ability here, as a block of 20 votes, they have the ability to stop the progress of a bill that Joe Biden wants, but it doesn't go far enough. So again, the infrastructure bill, Democrats in the House, progressives in the House can block that by voting against it with 20 votes and essentially saying, hey, improve this bill or we're not going to support this agenda. So whenever you see criticism of progressives, understand that, yes, it makes sense in that instance, or in cases like that, but that, of course, you also can't ignore the Joe Manchins and the Kristen Sinemas, who are using all of their time and power to specifically fight against progressive legislation. So it's important to criticize both, while also understanding that the real barrier to progress here is the fact that Democratic leadership in general is still serving corporate interests, the wealthy, while pretending not to.